So it's called the Mexico City Southeast Mission. So one thing you got to realize is that there's something, if you look on a map, it'll say the FD or the DF. That's the federal district. And that is kind of like Washington, D.C. And kind of like Washington, D.C., housing in the community in the city goes beyond those borders. What you can call Mexico City actually spreads out past what's the DFA, or the federal district. So we were actually outside of the federal district. And we were and at some point, the mission actually is, we were actually in the Mexican state, which kind of wraps around the federal district. So I wasn't actually in that part. So I actually got really rural. I wasn't expecting to be walking through cornfields and seeing livestock, because I was like, Mexico City, high rises all over the place. I'm going to be walking on the street. I actually for 8 months, I was in an area on the side of a volcano. Active, by the way, it went off, and it was pretty cool while I was on it. But walking through cornfields, it was, kind of really rural. Surprisingly so. So had to clean your shoes like twice a day, because it was so dusty and dirty, and you're walking through on these dirt roads. But the mission is a conglomerate of the East Mission and the South Mission. They formed one mission after that to the southeast, and it just split again because the growth is crazy. Like down in Mexico, baptisms are really high. Like Mexico and Brazil have some of the highest baptism rates in the world. Like it's not a European mission. It's not a United States mission. It's just people. I mean, at one point we had, like in 1 month, from my own experience, we had around 12 baptisms in 1 month. And so that's different from other parts of the world. Retention is kind of hard. A lot of people come through the door and then go out the door. That's what at a later point, I'd probably recommend, please focus on retention, not just on baptisms, because the baptisms will happen. Like the people there are ready for that. But focus more on getting families connected to the ward. Get the ward involved. Make sure they're involved. Don't just bring them to 1 or 2 lessons. Like make sure that they feel integrated, because you're going to regret every convert that goes out the door again, because you didn't do enough. So there's 7. There were 7 stakes, and I believe there's 3 or 4 now, because it just got cut in half, which is crazy. 4 stakes for a whole mission, and there's like 200 elders. But there's millions of people in that area. But wards, I was in a ward of 200, and then I was in another ward of like 100. But they're usually kind of up in that range, like 100 to 200 people. One of the wards, honestly, on the books, it had about 1,000 members, but about 800 of them were inactive. So, like I said, retention is hard. Lots in, lots out. So, yeah, expect smaller congregations, but not like crazy small like you might see in other places. Religious climate, that one's pretty easy. Almost everyone's going to be Catholic, non-practicing, okay? And basically what that means is they don't go to church except for, they probably don't even go on Easter, they might go on Easter and Christmas, but besides that, they'll just go for their First Communion, their baptism, their other ordinances, the sacraments, right? If you study it at all. So they do their sacraments, and then that's it. And they have parties at the church, and that's the extent of their religious life. And then there's a Christian group, which is like 1 in 10 people you'll meet will be like, yeah, I'm a Christian. They actually study the Bible, get together for 4 hours each Sunday, and they just blast the music out. It's fun. But they're more Bible bashy, those Christian people. That makes sense. And the Catholics are more kind of just, entrenched in their tradition, and they don't want to change just because that's how things have always been. And they feel like they're betraying past generations. They're betraying their parents. And in some cases, if a child says, I want to be baptized, mom, dad, the parents will feel like that child is distrusting them. Like their judgment wasn't good enough to say, I had you baptized as a baby. Unfortunately, that's how it is, so you'll run into that a lot. So, I don't know, work with the parents. Lots of kids, you'll find probably that there's lots of kids of inactive parents or non-members that you want to baptize. Just make sure that you get with the parents and you explain it and you teach them the doctrine, because I mean, maybe it's foreign to any parents or other people that served in missions that were very well structured, and you know, missionaries had cars and that, you know, I don't know. Here it's a little looser. The Mexican culture is a little looser, and a lot of times you'll get away with baptizing some 9-year-old kid just because, you know, yeah, his parents said okay at one point, or his parents are not opposed to it. You know, none of that slippery stuff. Like, just be straight up with the parents. You'll find out it works great every time. You'll understand that once you're there. So they actually, in my mission, they paired the white or the American elders with a native companion. And we had missionaries from all over. I had a Colombian companion, I had an Ecuadorian, a Peruvian, from all over the state of Mexico, dealt with elders from Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama. So they kind of come from all over, but they'd always kind of pair an American with those natives to keep them focused and keep them kind of on that obedient track and that productivity, because that's not their culture. Their culture is really kick back, relax, and they're the ones that want to sleep in sometimes and do those things. So just remember that if you are an American and you're watching this and you're headed down there, which is probably everybody, that you will have to be the source of the obedience and of the drive and of the, I don't know what it's called, the gumption, weird word, but for that companionship. And that's why they do it, and that'll rub off on them, and their lives will be better after. And so don't think, oh my gosh, what a trial that I have to deal with this companion. Think rather, them through interacting with me, maybe my mission is to help this elder, my companion. So, and in doing that, you bless thousands of lives after that, because he goes home and he rethinks the direction his life is taking, and he becomes a bishop or a stake president, and he changes so many lives. So remember that your companion might be your mission for the time you're with him. And that's especially true, and they've done research on it and found that, you know, native elders, you know, the rates of them going to college or being business owners or like doing something more after having an American companion is so much more, because that's all we talk about when we go, right? When I get home, I'll go on I'm going to go to college and I'm going to be an engineer and I'm going to do all this stuff. That rubs off on them. So just remember that. The areas that I served in were all in the Mexican state. Some of them were closer to the federal district than others. We did have to cross into and across the federal district or the main city lots of times for conferences, for going to the office. The office was by the airport in the temple. And those are kind of on the east side of the city. For those watching, that would be this this way. But my first area is actually not in my mission anymore. It was called Chalco. And that was the zone and the stake. But I was in an area called Vicente Guerrero, and it was huge. Like, it really was huge. No cars, no bicycles. You had to walk it. There were like 13 little cities in it, spread out, and you had to walk through them all. So it was a lot of walking. That was fun. My second area was on the side of the volcano called San Pedro Nechapa. And it actually had 4 wards. It was super cool. So it was about 3,000 people, 4 wards of about 200 members each. So high member population in this little town. Everybody knew everybody. After 8 months, I knew everybody. I knew all the rocks and the dogs too, but that's a different point. So after the volcano area, I then moved, and the zone was called Los Volcanes, you know, the volcanoes, obviously. And then I moved as close to the city as I ever got. Crazy place, millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people all crammed together. I guess the area was called Chimalhuacan, and my actual ward and area was Xochitenco. And so I actually met Americans down there. They were living down there. It was weird, but so that was that area. That was a lot of fun. After that, I went back to Chalco, and I was in the Chalco 1 ward, or the first ward of Chalco. And then after that, I went back to the volcanoes, the Los Volcanes, in Ameca 1 and 2 wards, first and second wards. Gosh, man, it's when you live something in one language, it's hard to translate to it. But anyways, that was great. So, and I had varying experience, you know, as a trainer and as a district leader and as a zone leader, and that was really fun. So I got to see lots of those places. The prettiest place was Los Volcanes. Very green, cornfields. You know, you had these volcanoes silhouetting. Smoke was coming out of that volcano every day, all day. So it was really cool. The ugliest, dirtiest, kind of smelliest place was the closest to the city, the big human crush, and that was Xochitenco. And so that was kind of that. And then Chalco was just in between. It literally was just in between geographically and kind of city and versus rural. So when you get down to Mexico, you're gonna find that they are all tone deaf. They can't sing very well. And me and my companion, my American companion, we found that the spirit came like that if we were able to sing a hymn ahead of a lesson, or if we even just showed up to, you know, for anything, for food, we'd sing a hymn. The spirit would be there. They could really feel the power of it because it was something that didn't happen much to them. They didn't have beautifully sung hymns in their sacrament meetings or in other places. And so I would say number one thing to do in your lessons, if you can, if you feel like you've been blessed with any sort of voice, sing a hymn. Sing a good hymn, you know, all the verses before you start a lesson, and watch what kind of miracles that does.